The folding chair in the back row creaked as I sat down, my leather portfolio resting on my lap. The quarterly board meeting for Chen Manufacturing was about to begin, and my mother had personally ensured I was seated as far from the executive table as possible. "Riley, you can observe from back there," she'd said, not even looking at me. "This is board business. The adults need to focus." I was 33 years old. I held an MBA from Wharton and had spent the last 8 years quietly building an investment portfolio worth $67 million. But to my family, I was still the disappointing youngest daughter who'd refused to join the family business. Chen Manufacturing had been founded by my grandfather 40 years ago, producing industrial components for automotive suppliers. When he died 5 years ago, he'd split the company among his 3 children: my mother Linda, my uncle David, and my aunt Susan. They'd been running it into the ground ever since, too busy fighting over titles and corner offices to notice their market share evaporating. My older sister Monica sat at the executive table beside Mom, looking polished in her vice president suit. She joined the company right out of college, climbing the ladder through nepotism rather than competence. My brother Jason sat next to Uncle David, recently promoted to operations director despite having no operations experience. I was the family embarrassment, the one who'd walked away from the legacy, the one who chose to play investor instead of working at a real company. What they didn't know was that for the past 3 years, I'd been systematically acquiring Chen Manufacturing stock. Small purchases at first through shell companies and investment funds. Then larger blocks as shareholders grew frustrated with declining dividends and internal family drama. As of yesterday, I owned 51.3% of Chen Manufacturing. And today's board meeting included a vote on executive compensation and leadership structure. "Let's call this meeting to order," Mom said, banging her gavel. She'd given herself the chairman title last year over Uncle David's objections. First item, quarterly financial review. Jason stood up, fumbling with a PowerPoint. "Revenue is down 8% compared to last year, but we believe." "You believe?" An outside board member, Thomas Wright, interrupted. "You've believed that for 3 quarters. When do we see results?" "The automotive market is challenging," Monica jumped in. "Everyone's struggling." "Your competitors aren't struggling," Thomas shot back. "Henderson Industrial just posted a 12% increase. What are they doing that you're not?" Awkward silence. My family had no answer because they hadn't bothered researching their competitors. "Let's move on," Mom said quickly. "Next item, executive compensation adjustments. We're proposing a 15% increase for all C-suite positions." Thomas's face reddened. "You want raises while the company loses money?" "We work very hard," Monica said defensively. "Family leadership deserves recognition." I checked my phone. My lawyer had confirmed the stock transfer documents were filed with the SEC this morning. Legally, I was now the majority shareholder. The board just didn't know it yet. "This is exactly the problem," Thomas said. 3 years ago this company was profitable. Now you're bleeding cash because you've tripled executive positions, all filled by family members with no relevant experience. "How dare you?" Uncle David stood up. "This is our family's company. We built this." "Your father built this," Thomas corrected. "You're dismantling it." The argument escalated. Voices rising, accusations flying. My mother's face turned red as she shouted about loyalty and legacy. Jason looked close to tears. Monica was frantically texting, probably complaining to her husband. I sat quietly in the back watching the collapse of their authority. "Let the real executives handle this." Mom finally screamed, pointing at Thomas. "You're just a board member. You don't understand how businesses really work." "I've run 3 successful manufacturing companies," Thomas said coldly. "I understand perfectly. This company needs professional management, not a family dynasty." "That's not your decision to make," Mom said smugly. "The Chen family controls 62% of voting shares. We can outvote you on anything." "Actually," I said from the back row, standing up, "you can't." Every head in the room turned toward me. "Riley, sit down," Mom snapped. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me very much. Because as of 9 a.m. this morning, I own 51.3% of Chen Manufacturing's voting shares." The room went silent. "That's ridiculous," Monica said. Where would you even get that kind of money? I walked forward, opening my portfolio. I've been acquiring shares for 3 years. Small blocks from frustrated shareholders. Larger purchases from investors tired of watching this company decline. Yesterday, I bought Susan's entire stake, 18%, which pushed me over the majority threshold. Aunt Susan, sitting at the far end of the table, looked uncomfortable but nodded. Riley made me a very generous offer. Better than staying on this sinking ship. Susan. Uncle David looked betrayed. You sold to her? She paid 30% over market value and offered it in cash, Susan said. You three have been tanking this company. I got out while I could. Mom's face had gone white. Riley, this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke. I have the documentation right here. I handed packets to each board member. Stock purchase agreements, transfer confirmations, SEC filings. All legal, all verified. Thomas was flipping through the pages, a smile slowly spreading across his face. This is legitimate. Completely legitimate, I confirmed. Which means that under the company bylaws as majority shareholder, I have the right to call for an immediate vote on board composition and executive positions. You can't do this, Jason stammered. This is our company. No. This is grandfather's company. He left shares to be distributed among family members. I simply bought them. All legally, all at fair market value. I turned to face my mother directly. You said the real executive should handle this. I agree. Which is why I'm calling for a vote to restructure company leadership. Mom found her voice sharp with panic. The family will never allow. The family doesn't have a choice. I have 51%. You have 29% combined. Uncle David has 13%. That's 42% total. I win any vote I call. The math hung in the air, undeniable. I motioned to remove Linda Chen as chairman and CEO, I said formally. And to remove Monica Chen as vice president and Jason Chen as operations director, effective immediately. Second, Thomas said quickly. You can't just fire us. Monica shrieked. We're family. I'm not firing you. I'm removing you from executive positions you're not qualified for. I looked at each of them. Monica, you have a bachelor's degree in communications and 5 years of experience as a mid-level manager. You're not qualified to be VP of a $40 million manufacturing company. Jason, you have a marketing degree and you've never worked in operations before Dad gave you that title. Mom, you're a skilled accountant, but you have no experience running a company this size. And you do. Mom's voice shook with rage. I have an MBA from Wharton, 8 years of investment analysis experience, and I've studied this company's operations extensively for 3 years. I've also consulted with 6 industry experts about restructuring plans. I opened my portfolio again. Here's my proposal. Professional management team, recruited from competitors. Streamlined operations. Updated equipment. Investment in R&D. Within 2 years, I project we can return to profitability and recapture lost market share. Thomas was nodding enthusiastically. The other outside board members were leaning forward, interested. All in favor of removing current executive leadership? I asked. Thomas raised his hand immediately. The 3 other outside board members followed. And I vote yes with my 51%, I said. Motion passes. Mom's face had gone from white to purple. Riley, you ungrateful. I'm not ungrateful. I'm preventing this company from total collapse. Grandfather spent 40 years building Chen Manufacturing. You 3 have spent 5 years destroying it. Kept my voice level. Revenue down 35% since you took over. Market share cut in half. Employee turnover at 40%. 2 major clients switched to competitors last year. That's not our fault. Uncle David protested. It absolutely is. You were too busy arguing over office sizes to notice Henderson Industrial was undercutting our prices. Too focused on fancy titles to realize our equipment was 10 years out of date. Too concerned with family politics to invest in the business. I turned to the full board. I motioned to appoint Thomas Wright as interim CEO while we conduct a formal search for permanent leadership. Thomas has 30 years of manufacturing experience and has successfully turned around 3 companies. I accept, Thomas said immediately. All in favor? The outside board members voted yes. My 51% made it unanimous. Motion passes. Thomas, you'll start Monday. I'll have my lawyers draw up the contracts. I looked at my family. Mom, Monica, Jason, you're welcome to remain as employees if you're willing to accept appropriate positions. Mom, we could use a senior accountant. Monica, there's an opening for marketing coordinator. Jason, sales associate. The demotion was obvious. Monica looked ready to explode. And if we refuse? Mom asked coldly. Then you'll receive severance packages and we'll part ways professionally. I shrugged. Either way, the executive restructuring is happening. I'm just offering you the option to stay on in roles you're actually qualified for. You're trying to humiliate us, Monica hissed. I'm trying to save the company. If that humiliates you, maybe ask yourself why. I started gathering my documents. There will be an all-staff meeting Monday morning. Thomas and I will present the restructuring plan. Board members, please plan to attend. Riley, Uncle David's voice was defeated. Why didn't you just talk to us? We could have worked something out. I tried. 3 years ago, I sent you a detailed analysis of the company's problems and recommendations for fixing them. You said I didn't understand the business and I should focus on my own career. He didn't remember. Of course he didn't. 2 years ago, I offered to help modernize your supply chain. Monica said I was overstepping and should respect family hierarchy. I looked at each of them. Last year, I warned you that Henderson was targeting your biggest clients. Jason said I was being dramatic and didn't understand manufacturing relationships. The memories were clearly returning, uncomfortable and damning. You didn't want my help, I said quietly. You wanted me to stay in my lane and let the real executives handle things. So I did. I stayed in my lane as an investor, and I bought a controlling stake in your company. Now I'm handling things. Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. Let's go. We're not staying for this. Monica and Jason followed her out, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Uncle David remained seated, staring at the table. She's right, you know. We screwed this up. We got the company and thought that meant we deserved to run it. We were wrong. It's not too late to fix it, I said. If you're willing to accept help. He looked up, his eyes tired. What do you need from me? Your shares. I'll buy them at fair market value. You can retire comfortably and I'll have 64% control. Makes the restructuring easier. He nodded slowly. Send me the offer. I'll sign. The restructuring took 6 months. We brought in a professional CEO from Henderson Industrial, poaching their VP of operations with a generous package. Upgraded equipment. Streamlined processes. Cut executive overhead by 60%. Invested in R&D. My mother, Monica, and Jason never returned to the company. They each received severance packages and sold their shares, to me at market rate. Mom tried to rally extended family against me, painting me as a traitor who'd stolen the family legacy. It didn't work. Grandfather's sister called me personally to say, about time someone with brains took over. Your mother was running it into the dirt. By the end of year 1, Chen Manufacturing was profitable again. Year 2, we'd recaptured 15% of our lost market share. Year 3, we were expanding into new markets and hiring aggressively. I received an invitation to my mother's birthday party 18 months after the board meeting. The note was stiff, formal. The family hopes you can attend. I declined politely. 3 years after the restructuring, Forbes ran a feature. How Riley Chen saved her family's manufacturing business by firing her family. The article detailed the turnaround, the strategy, and the difficult decision to prioritize company survival over family harmony. My mother sent me an email after it published. Short, bitter. I hope you're proud of yourself. I wrote back. I'm proud I saved grandfather's company. That was always the goal. She never responded. But the company flourished. The employees kept their jobs. The outside investors saw returns. And Chen Manufacturing, my grandfather's legacy, survived. Sometimes saving something means being willing to be the villain. I'd learned that in the back row, watching real executives destroy 40 years of work through incompetence and ego. And when the time came to act, I did. Not for revenge. Not for power. For the company my grandfather built and the family who didn't deserve to inherit it but did anyway. Sometimes love means taking control. Even if they never forgive you for it. The company's 10-year anniversary of the restructuring arrived last month. Chen Manufacturing now employs 340 people, triple the number from my mother's tenure. Revenue hit $127 million last year. We've become the preferred supplier for 3 major automotive manufacturers. Thomas Wright retired 2 years ago, handing the CEO position to the executive we'd poached from Henderson. She's brilliant, strategic, and has no connection to family politics. Perfect. I received a letter last week. My mother's handwriting on expensive stationery. Riley, I'm selling my house. Downsizing. I've been thinking about what you said at that board meeting, about saving grandfather's company. I was angry for years, but I've watched what you built. You were right. We would have destroyed it. I don't know if you'll ever forgive us for how we treated you, but I wanted you to know. You did the right thing. Dad would be proud. I am too, even if I'm terrible at showing it. Mom. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Forgiveness is complicated. But acknowledgement? That was something. I picked up my phone and typed, "Coffee next week? Let's talk." Some relationships can't be rebuilt. But maybe, after a decade of distance, some can be reimagined. The company was saved. The employees were thriving. Perhaps it was time to see if the family could be too.